Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra deck tech. After I now have flunked out of the seasonal tournament at the last moment by having played the last day when I didn't have to and had enough LP, because I figured it has been going well the last couple of weeks and I was never like in danger of dropping like too close to 0 LP and notably out of range of qualifying for the seasonal, and streaming was going particularly well and a lot of fun lately, so I figured I'll just play and stream the last day, don't play any experimental stuff, just stick to the good decks and I'll be fine. And then had a really horrible day, went like 1-9 with FTR Yetis on stream after going 7-3 the day before, and overall with other stuff only doing okay, and then basically finishing the stream with low LP and dropping to 0 LP off stream and desperately trying to find something that wins enough to get back up. Kept rolling bad matchups and stuff like that because the ladder became pretty volatile and very wild, like the metagame just suddenly exploded and people were on everything, and it was super unpredictable, and yeah, things kind of just didn't work out. But I at least want to share some deck techs with you. I have a couple of deck techs I want to cover, stuff that I figured out from all the testing and preparation by myself and with the team for the seasonal, and I formed a bunch of much more informed opinions on various decks and their qualities, what I did well with on ladder, and how to build some of the decks and so on. And yeah, I want to share that with you. One of the decks that I have been doing pretty well lately and that I've already posted about is the deck we're going to talk about now. It's Soggy, Teemo and Friends, or Fizz Seer Elusives, or whatever you want to call it. It's a deck that has been around, I think 2 seasons ago or something. Towards the end of the season it was kind of a thing, but not for that long. And it's kind of disappeared since. It got a few minor upgrades since then, and it's reasonably well positioned again. I'm currently, I think, 28-12 with it on ladder, so pretty good record. And yeah, the deck's also kind of cool and fun and interesting and different from like what a lot of other things are out there. So I want to share it with you guys. So without further ado, let's dive into the deck. Oh, one thing, you know the drill. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Really helps the channel out, doesn't cost you anything, and make sure you not miss out on future content. Alright, so this is the deck. It's mostly like the same core as the deck has always been, but we'll talk about the cards. So one of the bigger changes I made is, initially I think the deck in the past usually had like 2 to 3 warning shots and 3 shared spoils, but warning shot is pretty bad in the deck. It basically only activates shared spoils. The deck is okay at doing so. It has very little other synergy. The deck doesn't draw that many cards, so it's kind of a blank. It helps protect Fizz a bit, but that is also not that important and that great. So I wasn't too happy with just drawing like 0 cost deal 1s in a deck where it really doesn't do a whole lot, so I cut them. But yeah, let's talk about the units. So the 1-drops, we have Fizz and Omenhawk. Pretty straightforward. Omenhawk is great, buffs our elusives. Fizz is really great with Battle Fury that I'm gonna get into later, but it's overall just a nice 1-drop. The deck has a bunch of cheap spells to protect him, so he can be really annoying, especially for more reactive decks that rely on removal and can't really do a whole lot about him. And his champion spell actually comes in pretty handy a fair share of times in this deck due to being elusive. Getting an extra attack can do quite a lot, and if he gets buffed a couple times, he's quickly like a pretty cheap and impactful threat. And yeah, he just is good for the curve. In some matchups where he doesn't matter that much, you can use him as like an early unit, trade with an opposing 1 or 2 drop to not fall behind. And in other matchups, he's your star. Or like in the late game, he just kills people from like 10 plus with Battle Fury without them being able to do much about it. Then Omenhawk, just all-star in Freljord decks with units basically. Then we have the 2-drops. Golden Narwhal. The card's a bit vulnerable, but the deck is pretty decent at protecting it. It's most annoying if the opponent can sort of challenge it with units that aren't hurt too much by it, even if the Narwhal survives. But it's an elusive, it's cheap, it's a good carrier for the buffs, but without the buffs, it's a bit awkward at times. But it's still an early unit that deals some damage and potentially like trade. So if you can trade it early on, you might want to do so before the opponent gets rid of it for free later. Starlit Seer. This is the best Starlit Seer deck, and ever since Starlit Seer got buffed, he is actually a really powerful unit. There's the like Teemo Sejuani deck, which is also a contender for like Starlit Seer deck, but I feel like it does a bit more in this deck, and I think this deck might be a bit more viable than Teemo Sejuani, but I haven't played the other one in a while, but it never impressed me that much when I did. Anyway, Seer is pretty great here. We still have a bunch of cheap spells and ways to get more cheap spells with Spray Fin, so Seer usually gets a bunch of buffs out, and is one of the powerful things that I can do, just a couple of like buffed elusives that go ham on the opponent. Then we have 2 Lounging Lizard. When I had some room from like cutting back on the like spoils warning shot thing, I wanted a couple more units, and Lounging Lizard is a pretty decent elusive. Basically, if you play it on an attack turn, you get at least 2 attacks out of it. If it's buffed, or if you use like a Troll Chant on it while also maybe making another trade favorable with the -2, Lizard can get a bunch of work done, and on the last turn he sometimes like provides a free block into opponent's units, making attacking awkward for them and so on. And it's another elusive for buffs and increases the unit density. He's not great, and he's a bit situational, which is why I don't have 3, but the 2 have been pretty solid. Then we have the Twisted Fate. That's kind of an additional angle for the deck. It helps a bit with board control, like stunning or clearing small stuff, or just card advantage, just sitting around drawing an extra card, providing a jump blocker if you need it, threatening to level up eventually, especially because with Salvage, Spray Fin, and Shared Spoils, the deck has some extra card draw, so the opponent can't just ignore it. Then we have Spray Fin. Does everything the deck wants, really. Draws cards for Twisted Fate, gives you more tricks, is an elusive body, yada yada yada. Just a good card for this type of deck. And then we have Wave Rider, another big elusive that also is cheaper than it looks. The deck makes pretty solid use of the attune with all the cheap burst spells, making this mostly a delayed 4-cost 4/4 elusive, which is a pretty good rate. And once this gets buffed once or twice from like Seer, Hawk, or Spoils, it clocks really, really hard. Now let's talk about the spells. We want a decent amount of cheap spells for Starlit Seer and also stuff like Fizz and so on. So currently I'm on 2 Brittle Steel and 3 Elixir. Brittle Steel is a bit hit or miss, and it's more defensive than offensive use. Like, you can't use it to protect your units from spells and stuff like that, and you don't want too many like low impact things, and that's why I settled on 2, simply because I want to have enough cheap spells, and it does some solid work like against stuff like Fiora and so on. So it has its uses, but 2 is the maximum I'd recommend. Then we have Elixir, which a lot of the times does similar things to Brittle Steel, except that it is much better at protecting our units from damage-based removal, that where Brittle Steel can't. Just a really powerful card, always has been one of the premium Freljord cards, and this deck makes great use of it. Then we have 2 Shared Spoils. Just kind of has nice synergy with Twisted Fate. Buffing our units is good, so I wanted some number still, but you can now only use it on offensive turns. But with the elusive, you can usually do it pretty reliably on offensive turns at least. And multiples are awkward, so cutting down to 2 seemed like a good choice. Then we have 3 Troll Chant. It's a bit clunkier than Elixir or Brittle Steel, but it's kind of like Elixir and Brittle Steel all in one, and better than both. In a way, other than being slightly less flexible due to cost. So yeah, just a premium card in the deck. Does a lot of work here. Makes it that much easier to win races and keep our stuff around. Then we have 2 Fury of the North. I initially had 3, like most people did back then. But the problem is, it got nerfed since, and the card's a bit clunky, and at +3 attack, it's not even that good of a way to sort of finish the games anymore compared to when it was +4/+4. So it's more often a defensive trick than anything else, because on offense, the opponent isn't doing that much blocking. And it's basically like a more expensive troll chant on defense most of the time. So yeah, seemed a bit clunky and a bit situational. So 2 seems like a good number. Then we have 2 salvage. They are partially concession to Twisted Fate, and also because the deck plays kind of at a medium speed and a bit sort of adaptive, having this extra card draw to draw into our buffed stuff and grind a bit better when the opponent is aggressively trying to kill our stuff or force us to get into combat with our units to try and kill them in combat. Salvage helps us sort of stay afloat and threaten Twisted Fate level up. And then we have Battle Fury. Usually the list, I think, back in the day didn't play any, and I started with 1 at some point. I think I from the original list back in the day, I cut like 1 warning shot to try 1, and quickly came around on 2. The card is just really great. There are a lot of situations where you can just threaten a lethal attack, then the opponent has to do something to stop your lethal attack, and then you Battle Fury, and they die usually because they can't do something again to also stop that Battle Fury lethal. Also, Battle Fury is naturally great on Fizz with like a 1 or 2 cost spell backup to make sure the opponent can't like Vengeance or something like that on your Fizz and just die. So yeah, 2 Battle Fury has been great with Fizz and also with the other elusives, or just with an open attack on any unblocked unit really. Sometimes you just do a wide open attack and like Battle Fury and Omen Hawk, for example. I think the Battle Fury is one of the powerful things the deck does, and the 2 Battle Fury are a big part of why the deck is winning as much as I did and has been pretty impressive. So 2 is a great number because it's still a bit clunky, so I probably wouldn't want 3. But the second Battle Fury is much better than the third Fury of the North, for example, which is, I think, where I ultimately got the cut from when I made that change. So yeah, the deck might look a bit weird or a bit innocuous to some people, but it has been doing surprisingly well for me. It plays pretty alright against a lot of the common stuff right now, or even favorable. The biggest problem with the deck is that it's not that great against aggro, but it's also not like horrible against it. For example, I think I've faced this card twice, like on Ladder or Gauntlet, and beat it both times in very close games, so it's certainly winnable, but it's obviously not the matchups I actively want to play a lot of the time. But yeah, the deck does a pretty good job at offense-defense, because on offense you have your elusive, the opponent can't really block, so they can't really control how fast you pressure them, and you can to an extent control how fast they pressure you, because you have Troll Chants, Brittle Steels, Elixirs, Fury of the North. Your units are generally pretty beefy for their size, like 2/3s, 3/5s, 4/4s and stuff. So you have a bunch of units that are already slanted towards the defensive side, Starlit Seer being a 2/3 instead of a 3/2, and all that stuff. Making the deck actually pretty good at both pressuring and on defense, being reasonably good at blocking to make sure you also don't get raised back harder than you raising them. So yeah, as usual, we're gonna hop into some games to show it in action, and yeah, show you guys how it plays out and how to pilot it. If you have any further questions on the deck list and the card choices, feel free to ask. I hope I covered everything as satisfying as possible. And yeah, part of my team has also given the deck a try, and most of my teammates have had pretty good results with the deck as well. I think overall as a team, our win rate was like 61% or something, including like a really, really bad run of one teammate that had a really rough luck with the deck. So yeah, over like, I think 90 or 100 games, we had like 61% win rate or so. So the deck is definitely a pretty solid option. Like, it's not a tier 1 deck, but it's an interesting tier 2 deck that seems to be pretty well positioned right now. So if you want to try something different on ladder and still win, this is a great choice to mess around a bit and still be climbing. But it's obviously not like the first choice if all you care about is winning as much as possible, because it's not like the best deck in the format or anything. But it's pretty competitive, so yeah, check it out. It was definitely on the list of decks that I considered as part of potential lineups up until it was clear that I won't be playing in the season or due to the unfortunate events of Thursday. But there's always a next time, I guess. So yeah, see you in a moment with the first half of with the games. So stay tuned.